The coffee shop on Fifth Avenue was busy as usual when the sky suddenly went dark. Office workers looked up from their laptops and morning newspapers to see something that should have sent them screaming into the streets. A massive alien warship, easily 3 miles long, hung silently above Manhattan like a metal storm cloud. Its hull gleamed with unknown metals and pulsed with purple energy lines that seemed to breathe with malevolent life. Similar ships appeared over London, Tokyo, Moscow, and every major city on Earth within minutes. The news channels went crazy trying to explain what was happening. Social media exploded with photos and videos of the enormous vessels. Yet something strange was happening down on the streets. People were not running away in terror. Instead, they were pulling out their phones to take pictures. Dr. Helen Murphy was in her office at the United Nations when the first reports came in. She had been Earth's leading xenobiologist for 20 years, always wondering if this day would come. Now it was here, and she felt more excited than afraid. The Security Council was meeting an emergency session when the aliens made their first communication. The message came through every screen on Earth at the same time. A tall, imposing figure appeared, clearly not human. The alien had gray skin, large black eyes, and wore what looked like military armor decorated with strange symbols. When it spoke, its voice was deep and commanding, translated somehow into every language on Earth simultaneously. "I am Admiral Corvin of the Galactic Empire," the alien announced. "Your species has been selected for integration into our domain. You will surrender unconditionally and accept vassal status under our rule. Resistance is futile and will result in the destruction of your civilization. You have 48 hours to prepare for formal surrender ceremonies." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the world in stunned silence for about 30 seconds. Then something unprecedented happened. In coffee shops, offices, and homes around the globe, humans began to laugh. Not the nervous laughter of fear, but genuine amusement. The alien's dramatic speech reminded many people of old science fiction movies they had seen as children. Ambassador Reed was chosen to represent Earth in the upcoming negotiations. He was a career diplomat who had spent decades resolving conflicts between nations. As he prepared to board the alien vessel, his team of advisors seemed surprisingly calm. Military analyst Tom Williams kept making jokes about the alien's dramatic presentation style. Dr. Ruth Martinez, a physicist, was more interested in how the alien ships managed to hover so effortlessly above the cities. The transport beam that lifted them to the alien ship was certainly impressive. Reed found himself standing in what was clearly designed to be an intimidating reception chamber. The walls were dark metal covered in weapon displays and battle trophies from conquered worlds. Massive screens showed images of destroyed cities and defeated alien armies. The lighting was deliberately harsh and threatening. Admiral Corvin stood waiting for them, surrounded by his senior officers. Each alien was taller than the humans and wore armor that made them look like walking tanks. Their weapons were clearly visible and designed to look as menacing as possible. The entire setup was meant to make visitors feel small and helpless. "Welcome to the Dominator," Admiral Corvin said in his deep voice. "You stand aboard the most powerful warship in the galaxy. From this vessel, I have overseen the conquest of 47 worlds. Your species will be the 48th to join our empire." Reed looked around the chamber with professional interest rather than fear. He had seen similar intimidation tactics in his diplomatic career, just never on such a grand scale. The alien setup was impressive, but it reminded him of a corporate boardroom designed to make visitors feel uncomfortable during tough negotiations. "Thank you for the tour," Reed replied politely. "Your ship is certainly impressive. I have to ask, though, have you tried approaching other species with maybe a less threatening introduction? This whole setup seems like it might create unnecessary hostility." The aliens exchanged glances. In their thousands of years of conquest, no species had ever critiqued their presentation style. Most civilizations either fled in terror or immediately begged for mercy. Admiral Corvin continued with his prepared speech, but he seemed slightly less confident now. Your world possesses resources that our empire requires, the admiral continued. Your population will be relocated to designated areas where they will serve useful functions within our domain. Your military forces will be disbanded and your weapons destroyed. Your governments will be dissolved and replaced with our administrative systems. Dr. Martinez raised her hand like a student in class. Excuse me, but what kind of resources are you talking about? Are we discussing mineral extraction, agricultural products, or something else entirely? And what exactly do you mean by useful? Functions? Are we talking about skilled labor or just general workforce management? Admiral Corvin paused. The human was asking practical questions about the conquest process as if she were reviewing a business proposal. This had never happened. Before, other species usually spent this time pleading for their lives or trying to negotiate for mercy. These details will be explained after your surrender, the admiral said, trying to regain his commanding presence. Your species will learn to serve the Empire efficiently or face the consequences of resistance. Tom Williams spoke up from the back of the human group. I have to say, your whole approach here seems pretty inefficient. Most of the species you've conquered appear to have been either primitive or pacifist. Have you considered that ruling through fear might not be the most effective long-term strategy? History shows that occupied populations tend to be more productive when they're not constantly planning rebellions. The alien officers began whispering to each other in their own language. The human delegation was treating their conquest ultimatum like a policy discussion. Reed noticed their confusion and decided to push a little further. Look, we appreciate that you've taken the time to visit our world, Reed said with a diplomatic smile. But I think there might be some cultural misunderstandings here. Humans tend to work better as partners than as servants. Maybe we could discuss some kind of mutually beneficial arrangement instead of this whole conquest scenario. Admiral Corvin's composure finally cracked slightly. This is not a negotiation, he said firmly. You will surrender or your cities will be destroyed. We have the power to eliminate your entire species if you refuse to comply. Reed nodded thoughtfully. That's certainly an option, but it seems like a waste of resources. Why destroy a potentially useful civilization when you could have willing allies instead? We're generally pretty reasonable people once you get to know us. The alien admiral stared at the human ambassador for a long moment. In thousands of years of conquest, no species had ever suggested that the Galactic Empire might want to reconsider their approach. Most civilizations were so terrified by this point that they could barely speak coherently. You have 48 hours to prepare for surrender. Admiral Corvin repeated, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Use this time wisely. As the human delegation was transported back to Earth, Reed was already planning his next move. The aliens were clearly powerful, but they seemed to have no experience dealing with a species that refused to be intimidated. This could be very interesting indeed. The news broadcast was interrupted by another transmission from the alien fleet. This time, Admiral Corvin appeared against a backdrop of what looked like a training facility. Behind him stood 7 figures in the most intimidating armor anyone had ever seen. Each warrior was over 7 feet tall, covered in black metal plates that seemed to absorb light. Their helmets were designed to look like skulls, and energy weapons were built directly into their gauntlets. Humans of Earth, Admiral Corvin announced, you seem to misunderstand the gravity of your situation. Allow me to introduce the Vanguard Elite, the most feared warriors in the galaxy. These soldiers have never known defeat. They have brought down civilizations that thought themselves invincible. The camera focused on the warriors as they began a demonstration. They moved with fluid precision, their weapons cutting through metal targets like paper. Energy beams vaporized stone barriers. In seconds, they worked as a perfect unit, each warrior anticipating the other's moves without any visible communication. The display was designed to showcase absolute combat superiority. In the Pentagon, General Parker was watching with his staff. Instead of the expected fear, the room was filled with professional interest. Lieutenant Colonel Davis was taking notes on the alien combat formations. Major Brooks was analyzing the energy weapon discharge patterns. The mood was more like a training seminar than a terror briefing. Interesting tactical approach, General Parker commented. But notice how they're fighting theoretical enemies? All their targets are stationary or follow predictable patterns. I wonder how they'd handle adaptive opposition. Back on the alien ship, the demonstration continued. The Vanguard elite performed increasingly complex combat scenarios, each one designed to showcase their overwhelming power. They destroyed mock cities, defeated holographic armies, and demonstrated weapons that could level entire buildings. The presentation was meant to show humans exactly what they would face if they refused to surrender. Dr. Martinez was watching from the UN building with her team of scientists. While the alien weapons were certainly impressive, she was more interested in the underlying technology. The energy pattern suggested some kind of plasma-based system, but the power source was fascinating. She started making calculations on her tablet, trying to understand the physics involved. "Look at the energy consumption," she said to her colleague, Dr. Adams. "Those weapons are incredibly powerful, but they seem to require massive amounts of energy. I bet they have significant cooling periods between uses." The alien transmission continued with historical footage of the Vanguard elite in action against other species. The images showed alien cities burning, vast armies fleeing in terror, and entire populations surrendering without a fight. Each conquest was presented as evidence of the Empire's unstoppable might, but the human reaction was not what Admiral Corvin expected. Instead of terror, Earth's military analysts were studying the footage with the same intensity they would give to training videos. They were learning from the alien tactics, identifying patterns and weaknesses in the Empire's approach. Ambassador Reed was preparing for his second meeting with the aliens when he received reports from around the world. Military academies were analyzing the alien combat demonstrations. Scientists were reverse engineering the visible technology. Most surprisingly, internet forums were already debating the tactical effectiveness of the Vanguard elite formations. The second meeting took place in a different chamber, one designed to look like a war room. Maps of conquered worlds covered the walls, showing the extent of the Empire's domain. Admiral Corvin stood behind a table displaying holographic representations of various alien species in chains, all looking defeated and broken, as you can see, Admiral Corvin said. Resistance is truly futile. The Vanguard elite has never failed to bring a species to its knees. Your weapons are primitive compared to our technology. Your military forces are inadequate compared to our warriors. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Reed looked at the displays with the same interest he might show at a military museum. The alien conquests were certainly impressive, but he noticed something important. Most of the defeated species appeared to be either technologically primitive or naturally peaceful. The few advanced civilizations had been caught completely off guard by the Empire's tactics. "These are very impressive victories," Reed said diplomatically. "But I have to ask, have you ever fought a species that had time to prepare?" Most of these conquests seem to have been completed before the defending species could mount an effective resistance. Admiral Corvin's eyes narrowed. "Preparation is irrelevant against superior force. The Vanguard elite adapts to any defense. Your species cannot hope to match our combat effectiveness." At that moment, Tom Williams stepped forward. The retired Marine had spent his entire career studying military tactics from around the world. He had watched the alien demonstrations with professional interest, and he had some observations to share. "With respect, Admiral," Williams said, "your warriors are certainly skilled, but their tactics are pretty rigid. They use the same formations against every enemy type. A properly trained opposing force could exploit that predictability." The alien officers exchanged glances. No conquered species had ever critiqued their military doctrine before. Most civilizations were too terrified to think clearly during these meetings. "Furthermore," Williams continued, "your weapons are powerful, but they seem to have limited ammunition capacity. And your armor, while impressive, appears to sacrifice mobility for protection. Against a fast-moving, adaptive enemy, those could be significant disadvantages." Dr. Martinez joined the conversation. "I've been analyzing your energy weapon demonstrations," she said. "The plasma discharge pattern suggests you're using some kind of contained fusion process. Very elegant, but I noticed significant heat buildup after sustained firing. Your warriors must need cooling periods between engagements." Admiral Corvin was becoming visibly uncomfortable. The humans were dissecting his supposedly invincible military force like students in a classroom. They showed no fear, only curiosity and professional interest. "Your analysis is irrelevant," the Admiral said, his voice losing some of its earlier confidence. "The Vanguard elite has defeated species far more advanced than your own. Your primitive weapons cannot penetrate our armor. Your crude tactics cannot overcome our experience." Reed decided to share some information that might help the aliens understand their situation better. "Admiral, I think you might be underestimating our species. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've developed some very sophisticated approaches to conflict resolution." He gestured to Williams. "Tom here has studied every major military engagement in human history. We've learned to adapt our tactics to overcome superior technology. We've won wars against impossible odds by being creative and flexible. Dr. Martinez has been working on theoretical weapon systems that could neutralize energy-based attacks." Reed continued, "And we have entire universities dedicated to studying warfare from every possible angle. When humans fight, we don't just use weapons. We use imagination." The alien officers were whispering among themselves again. The human delegation was treating their ultimate threat like an interesting technical problem they showed no signs of. The fear that had characterized every other first contact scenario. "General," Parker's voice came through Reed's communication device. "Ambassador, please inform our guests that we've completed our preliminary analysis of their combat demonstrations. Our war colleges are already developing countermeasures for their standard tactics. Should be interesting to test them out." "Admiral." Corvin heard the transmission and his composure finally cracked. "You dare to threaten the Galactic Empire?" he roared. "We have conquered 47 worlds. We have weapons that can destroy your entire planet. Your species will learn to fear us, or you will cease to exist," Reed smiled politely. "Admiral, I don't think you understand. We're not threatening you. We're just naturally curious about how things work. When humans see a new challenge, our first instinct is to figure out how to overcome it. It's not personal, it's just how we think." The meeting ended with Admiral Corvin storming out of the chamber, leaving the human delegation to be escorted back to Earth. As they materialized in the UN building, Reed was already planning his next move. The aliens were clearly powerful, but they had never encountered a species that treated their threats as puzzles to be solved. Dr. Martinez was already on her phone, calling colleagues at research institutions around the world. The alien technology was fascinating, and she was eager to share her observations with the scientific community. Within hours, humanity's greatest minds would be working on the problem. Tom Williams was heading to the Pentagon to brief the Joint Chiefs. The alien military doctrine was impressive but predictable. Human forces had centuries of experience adapting to new threats. This would be their greatest challenge yet, but also their most interesting one. As the alien fleet continued to hover menacingly over Earth cities, something unprecedented was happening below. Instead of cowering in fear, humanity was rolling up its sleeves and getting to work. The species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars was about to face its greatest test yet. And they were actually looking forward to it. The third transmission from the alien fleet came at dawn, broadcasting simultaneously to every device on Earth. Admiral Corvin appeared more serious than before, flanked by holographic displays showing the true scale of the Galactic Empire. Star maps revealed 12 conquered star systems, each containing multiple worlds under Imperial control. "Humans of Earth," Admiral Corvin began, his voice carrying a weight of absolute authority. "Your continued defiance forces me to reveal the full extent of your folly. Observe the fate of those who resisted the Empire." The screen shifted to show historical records of the Empire's conquests. The first civilization was called the Zelani, a peaceful species that had achieved interstellar travel through purely scientific means. They had no military to speak of, believing that intelligent species would resolve conflicts through dialogue. The Empire's forces had overwhelmed them in a matter of days. Next came the Corvani, a species that had focused entirely on artistic and cultural development. Their cities were beautiful beyond description, filled with sculptures and architecture that represented thousands of years of creative evolution. The Empire had cataloged their art treasures before claiming their worlds. Treating the Corvani themselves as afterthoughts, the Threnody were shown next, a species that had achieved remarkable technological advancement but had never developed weapons more sophisticated than simple energy tools. They had tried to negotiate with the Empire, offering to share their scientific knowledge in exchange for independence. The Empire had simply taken their technology and enslaved the species. Each conquest followed the same pattern. The Empire would appear with overwhelming force, demand immediate surrender, and face minimal resistance. Most species either fled to other systems or submitted without a fight. The few that tried to resist were crushed quickly by the vanguard. Elite, who had never encountered serious opposition. In the White House Situation Room, President Carter was watching with her full cabinet. The alien conquests were certainly impressive in scale, but something about the pattern bothered her. Every defeated species seemed to share certain characteristics that made them vulnerable to the Empire's approach. "They're all missing something," she said to her advisors. "Look at the pattern. Peaceful species, artistic species, scientific species, but where are the warrior cultures? Where are the civilizations that built their societies around conflict and survival?" Dr. Kim was watching from her office at the Centers for Disease Control. As a xenobiologist, she was fascinated by the diversity of species the Empire had encountered. But she was also noticing something troubling about the conquest records. None of the defeated species seemed to have adapted or evolved in response to the Empire's tactics. The transmission continued with testimonies from conquered species. Leaders from various worlds appeared on screen, speaking in monotone voices about the benefits of imperial rule. They praised the Empire's efficiency and organization. They expressed gratitude for being integrated into the galactic community. Each testimony was clearly scripted and delivered without emotion, but Dr. Kim noticed something else. The conquered species all showed signs of what she recognized as learned helplessness. They had been broken so completely by their initial defeats that they had stopped trying to resist or adapt. They had accepted their fate and stopped fighting back. The final part of the transmission showed the Empire's military might in full detail. Thousands of warships patrolled the conquered systems. Massive space stations served as administrative centers for entire star systems. The industrial capacity of 12 worlds had been turned toward supporting the Empire's continued expansion. "This is the reality of the Galactic Empire," Admiral Corvin concluded. "We have spent millennia perfecting the art of conquest. Your species represents nothing more than the next logical step in our expansion. Surrender now, and you will be treated with the same consideration as our other subjects." The transmission ended, leaving Earth's leaders to contemplate the scope of what they faced. The Empire was vast, ancient, and had never known defeat. Their military machine was refined through centuries of conquest. Their administrative systems were designed to efficiently manage dozens of different species. Ambassador Reed was preparing for his third meeting with the aliens when he received a call from Dr. Kim. The xenobiologist had been studying the conquest records and had made an observation that could change everything. "Ambassador," Dr. Kim said, "I've been analyzing the Empire's historical data. They've conquered 47 species, but look at the types of civilizations they've defeated. Every single one was either primitive, pacifist, or had never developed a military culture." Reed pulled up the data on his tablet. The pattern was indeed clear. The Empire had never faced a species that had been forged by constant conflict. They had never encountered a civilization that had spent its entire history learning to fight and adapt under pressure. "They've never fought anyone like us," Reed realized. Every species they've conquered was defeated because they had no experience with warfare. But humans have been fighting wars for our entire history. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and global conflicts. We've learned to adapt to threats that would destroy other species. The third meeting took place in yet another intimidating chamber, this one designed to look like a throne room. Admiral Corvin sat on a raised platform surrounded by the banners of conquered worlds. The lighting was designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. "I trust you have reviewed our historical records," Admiral Corvin said. "You have seen the fate of those who defied us. Surely even your primitive species can recognize the futility of resistance." Reed looked up at the alien admiral with genuine curiosity rather than fear. "I have to ask, Admiral, in all your conquests, have you ever fought a species that actually fought back? Really fought back, with everything they had?" The question caught Admiral Corvin off guard. "All species fight back initially," he said defensively. "The Zilani attempted to use their scientific knowledge against us. The Corvani tried to inspire resistance through their art. The Threnody offered technological bribes. All forms of resistance are ultimately futile." "But those aren't fighting back," Tom Williams interjected. "Those are attempts at negotiation or passive resistance. Have you ever fought a species that responded to your threats by immediately beginning to develop weapons specifically designed to kill you?" Dr. Martinez stepped forward with her tablet displaying her analysis. "I've been studying your conquest records and I noticed something interesting. Every species you've defeated tried to avoid conflict or find peaceful solutions. None of them responded to your arrival by immediately beginning military preparations." "That's because intelligent species recognize superior force," Admiral Corvin replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Only primitive species resort to violence when faced with inevitable defeat." Dr. Kim spoke up from her position with the human delegation. "Admiral, I think you misunderstand what we're talking about. Humans don't fight because we're primitive. We fight because we're survivors. Our entire evolutionary history is about adapting to threats and overcoming impossible odds." She activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. "Our planet has tried to kill us repeatedly. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, asteroid impacts. Each time we adapted and became stronger. We fought wars against each other for thousands of years, and each conflict taught us new ways to survive. We're not a peaceful species that happened to develop technology," Reed explained. "We're a warrior species that happened to develop science. When you threaten us, our instinct isn't to negotiate or surrender. Our instinct is to figure out how to destroy you." The alien officers were becoming visibly uncomfortable. The human delegation was explaining their species' history, as if it were a resume for a job interview. They showed no shame about their violent past, only pride in their survival. "Furthermore," Tom Williams continued, "we're not just warriors, we're adaptive warriors. Every human conflict has been fought differently because we learned from the previous one. We don't just fight, we evolve our fighting techniques in real time." Admiral Corvin tried to regain his composure. "Your primitive weapons cannot harm our technology. Your crude tactics cannot overcome our experience. The Vanguard elite has never been defeated." "That's because they've never fought anyone who fights back properly," Dr. Martinez said with a smile. "You've been fighting artists and scientists and philosophers. We're the first species you've encountered that actually enjoys a good fight." Reed decided to share some information that might help the aliens understand their situation. "Admiral, in the 48 hours since your arrival, every military academy on Earth has been wargaming scenarios for fighting your forces. Our weapons manufacturers have been working around the clock to develop countermeasures for your technology. Our computer programmers have been analyzing your ship's energy signatures to find weaknesses," Dr. Martinez added. "Our biologists have been studying your physical capabilities to identify vulnerabilities. Our historians have been reviewing every successful resistance movement in human history. And our children have been playing video games that simulate fighting alien invaders," Tom Williams said with a grin. We've been preparing for this scenario our entire lives without even realizing it. The silence in the throne room was deafening. For the first time in the Empire's long history, Admiral Corvin was facing a species that treated his arrival not as a disaster but as an opportunity. The humans were excited about the challenge. "You cannot defeat the Galactic Empire, Admiral," Corvin said, but his voice carried doubt for the first time. "We have conquered 47 worlds. We have weapons you cannot imagine. We have experience you cannot match." "You have experience conquering people who don't fight back," Reed replied gently. "That's a very different skill set from fighting." "People who do?" "And Admiral, I have to tell you something that might change your perspective on this whole situation." Reed paused for dramatic effect. "We're not trying to defeat the Galactic Empire. We're trying to understand it. The difference is that understanding something is the first step to changing it, and humans are very good at changing things." As the human delegation was transported back to Earth, Admiral Corvin remained in his throne room, staring at the banners of conquered worlds. For the first time in his long career, he was beginning to doubt the Empire's invincibility. The humans were unlike any species he had ever encountered. They approached his threats with curiosity rather than fear. They analyzed his strengths as if they were problems to be solved. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be enjoying the challenge. On Earth, humanity was preparing for the greatest test in its history. But unlike the 47 species before them, humans were not preparing to surrender. They were preparing to fight, to adapt, and to survive. And they were doing it with an enthusiasm that would have terrified the Empire. If they had truly understood what it meant, the fourth meeting did not take place on the alien ship. Instead, Admiral Corvin and his senior staff were invited to a location on Earth that had been prepared specifically for this encounter. The coordinates led them to a facility in the Nevada desert that had been hastily constructed in just 3 days. As the alien delegation materialized at the designated coordinates, they found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. The human facility was not designed to intimidate or impress. It was purely functional, built for a single purpose: demonstration. Dr. Martinez stood waiting for them with a team of engineers and scientists. Behind her, a series of targets had been set up, each one built to replicate the specifications of alien armor and ship hull materials. The entire setup looked more like a testing ground than a military facility. "Welcome to Earth, Admiral," Dr. Martinez said with genuine enthusiasm. "We wanted to show you what we've been working on since our last meeting. I think you'll find it interesting." Admiral Corvin and his officers approached cautiously. The human facility was smaller than they expected, and the humans themselves seemed remarkably relaxed. There was none of the desperate urgency they had seen in other species facing conquest. "You requested a demonstration of human military capability," Reed said, joining the group. "We thought it would be more productive to show you our approach to problem solving rather than just our weapons." The first demonstration was simple. A human engineer named Roberts activated a device that looked like nothing more than a modified radar dish. When he pointed it at one of the alien armor samples, the metal began to vibrate and then suddenly cracked along stress lines that had been invisible moments before. "Resonance frequency weapon," Roberts explained casually. "We analyzed the molecular structure of your armor from the samples we collected during your demonstrations. Every material has a frequency that will cause it to self-destruct. We just had to find the right wavelength." The alien officers exchanged worried glances. The human device was crude compared to their technology, but it had identified a weakness in their armor that they hadn't known existed. The second demonstration was more complex. A team of human programmers had set up a computer simulation that showed alien ship movements during their previous conquests. The simulation ran through several scenarios, each one showing how the alien fleet could be defeated using conventional human tactics. "Your ship formations are very effective against scattered resistance," explained Dr. Adams, the team leader. "But they're vulnerable to coordinated attacks from multiple angles. We've identified 17 different approach vectors that would Allow smaller forces to defeat your larger fleet. Admiral Corvin stared at the simulation in disbelief. The humans had war-gamed his entire military doctrine in less than a week. They had found weaknesses in strategies that had been perfected over centuries of conquest. The third demonstration was the most disturbing. A young human technician named Lisa had reverse-engineered the alien energy weapons based on the demonstrations they had observed. Her recreation was cruder than the original, but it worked on the same principles. The interesting thing about your plasma weapons, Lisa explained, is that they're actually pretty inefficient. Most of the energy gets wasted as heat. We've designed a simple heat sink system that can absorb the excess energy and redirect it back at the weapon itself. She activated her device, and the alien energy weapon sample overloaded and shut down within seconds. The humans had not only understood the alien technology, they had found a way to turn it against itself, but the real demonstration was still to come. Reed led the alien delegation to a larger area where something truly unprecedented was waiting. 3 human military units were arranged in formation, each one equipped with gear that had been designed specifically for fighting the Empire's forces. "Admiral," Reed said, "I'd like you to meet the 1st Adaptive Defense Regiment. They've been training for exactly this scenario since your arrival." The human soldiers looked nothing like the Vanguard elite. They were smaller, more mobile, and their equipment was clearly improvised. But there was something in their eyes that made the alien officers step back instinctively. These humans were not afraid. They were eager. Colonel Hayes stepped forward to address the alien delegation. "Sir, we understand you've never encountered serious resistance before. We'd like to show you what happens when humans fight back." The demonstration began with a simulated attack. Holographic projections of Vanguard elite warriors appeared and began their standard assault pattern. The human soldiers responded with tactics that the aliens had never seen before. Instead of meeting the attack head-on, the humans scattered and regrouped in unpredictable patterns. They used their environment as a weapon, turning the aliens' superior strength against them. They adapted their tactics in real time, responding to each alien move with a counter-move that the Empire's forces had never encountered. "Your warriors are trained to fight enemies who react predictably," Colonel Hayes explained as the simulation continued. "But humans don't follow predictable patterns. We improvise, we adapt, we overcome." The simulation showed human forces defeating Vanguard elite units through superior tactics and adaptability. The aliens watched in growing horror as their supposedly invincible warriors were outmaneuvered by smaller, weaker humans who refused to fight by the rules. But the most shocking part of the demonstration was yet to come. Dr. Martinez activated a final device that had been hidden throughout the facility. The entire area was suddenly filled with a low-frequency hum that made the alien officers stagger. "We've been analyzing your biology during these meetings," Dr. Martinez explained. "Your inner ear structure is sensitive to certain sound frequencies. This won't hurt you, but it will make it difficult for you to maintain your balance or coordinate your movements." The alien officers found themselves struggling to stand upright. Their superior physical capabilities were useless against a weakness they hadn't known they possessed. The humans had identified and exploited a vulnerability in their basic physiology. Admiral Corvin managed to steady himself against a support post. "This is impossible," he gasped. "We are the most advanced military force in the galaxy. Our weapons are beyond your comprehension. Our tactics are perfected through millennia of conquest." "Your weapons are impressive," Reed agreed, "but they're designed to fight enemies who try to match your strength." "We're not trying to match your strength. We're trying to make your strength irrelevant." Tom Williams stepped forward with a tablet, showing the results of their analysis. "Admiral, your military doctrine is based on overwhelming force and intimidation. It works perfectly against species that fight conventionally. But humans don't fight conventionally. We fight dirty." The demonstration continued with more examples of human adaptability. Engineers showed how they could jam alien communications. Biologists explained how they could create organisms that would interfere with alien life support systems. Computer Scientists demonstrated viruses that could corrupt alien technology. Each example was simple, elegant, and devastating. The humans had not tried to match the Empire's advanced technology. Instead, they had found ways to turn that technology into a liability. You see, Admiral, Dr. Kim explained, evolution taught us that you don't have to be stronger than your enemy. You just have to be more adaptive. Every threat humanity has faced has made us better at surviving the next one. The final demonstration was the most terrifying of all. A group of human children, none older than 12, were brought out to show the aliens something that no other species had ever possessed. "Kids," Reed said to the children, "show our visitors what you've been working on in school." The children began to present their projects. One had designed a new type of camouflage that could fool alien sensors. Another had created a communication system that could work even if the aliens jammed all traditional methods. A third had invented a trap that would disable alien vehicles using nothing more than readily available materials. Admiral Corvin stared at the children in horror. These were not trained warriors or experienced scientists. They were juveniles who had been treating the alien invasion as a school project, and they had come up with solutions that his military engineers would never have considered. "Your species teaches warfare to children?" Admiral Corvin asked in disbelief. "We teach problem-solving to children," Reed corrected. "The fact that your arrival represents a problem to be solved is just a coincidence." The demonstration ended, with the humans showing the aliens something that no conquered species had ever offered before. They had not just prepared defenses against the Empire's attack. They had prepared a comprehensive strategy for defeating the Empire entirely. Maps showed how human forces would spread throughout the galaxy. Technical specifications detailed how Earth's industrial capacity could be converted to support interstellar warfare. Personnel assessments identified which human populations would be most effective in different types of combat operations. "This is not a defensive strategy," Admiral Corvin realized with growing alarm. "You are planning to attack us." "Not attack," Reed corrected gently. "Liberate. We've been studying your conquered species, Admiral. They're not your subjects, they're your victims. And humans have a long history of liberating victims from their oppressors." Dr. Martinez pulled up holographic displays showing the conquered worlds. "We've identified several species that would make excellent allies once they're free from Imperial control. The Zilani scientific knowledge combined with human military innovation could revolutionize interstellar warfare. The Corvani artistic traditions could inspire new forms of resistance that your forces would never expect. The Threnody technology, once properly weaponized, could turn your own ships against you," Tom Williams added. "And that's just the beginning. Once we start liberating your empire, each freed species will add their unique capabilities to our coalition." The alien officers were whispering frantically among themselves. The humans were not just planning to resist conquest. They were planning to dismantle the entire galactic empire and rebuild it as something completely different. "This is madness," Admiral Corvin said, his voice shaking with either rage or fear. "You are a single planet. We control 12 star systems, our fleet numbers in the thousands. Our experience spans millennia." "Your experience spans conquering people who don't fight back," Colonel Hayes said bluntly. "Our experience spans fighting people who fight back harder every time you think you've beaten them. There's a difference." Reed decided it was time to make their final offer. "Admiral, we don't want to destroy the Galactic Empire. We want to transform it. Imagine what your civilization could accomplish if it was built on cooperation instead of conquest. Think about what you could achieve if you had willing allies instead of terrified subjects." "The Empire has brought order to the galaxy," Admiral Corvin replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "We have eliminated chaos and established universal peace." "You've eliminated resistance and established universal fear," Dr. Kim corrected. "That's not the same thing as peace. Peace is what happens when different species work together voluntarily. What you have is just conquest with a pleasant name." The human demonstration had achieved something that the Empire thought was impossible. For the first time in their long history of conquest, Admiral Corvin and his officers were genuinely afraid. Not afraid of human weapons or technology, but afraid of human ideas. The species they had come to conquer was offering them something they had never considered: a choice. They could continue their pattern of conquest and face a war unlike anything they had ever experienced, or they could try something completely new. As the alien delegation prepared to return to their ship, Reed made one final observation. "Admiral, you came here expecting to add another species to your collection of subjects. But I think you're starting to realize that humans don't collect well. We're not the kind of species that accepts conquest gracefully. We prefer partnerships." Dr. Martinez added, "They're more fun, more productive, and much less likely to result in the complete overthrow of your government." Admiral Corvin looked back at the human facility one last time. Everything he had believed about conquest and superiority was crumbling around him. The humans had shown him that the Empire's greatest strength, their invincibility, was also their greatest weakness. They had never learned to adapt because they had never needed to. But humans were different. They had spent their entire evolutionary history adapting to threats and overcoming impossible odds. The Empire's arrival was just another challenge to be solved, and humans were very good at solving challenges. As the alien delegation beamed back to their ship, Admiral Corvin knew that everything had changed. The Empire would never be the same again, regardless of what happened next. The humans had introduced a new concept into galactic politics, the idea that conquest might not be the only way forward. And that idea was far more dangerous to the Empire than any weapon could ever be. Admiral Corvin stood alone in his private quarters aboard the Dominator, staring at reports that would have been unthinkable just days earlier. Intelligence analysts from across the fleet had been working around the clock to assess the human threat, and their conclusions were uniformly terrifying. The humans had not been idle during the negotiations. Satellite surveillance showed massive construction projects appearing overnight in every major population center on Earth. Factory complexes were being converted to produce weapons and equipment designed specifically for fighting the Empire's forces. Most disturbing of all, the humans were sharing their anti-Empire technology freely with each other, accelerating their military development at an unprecedented rate. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication from the Imperial High Command. Admiral Corvin straightened his uniform and activated the holographic display, expecting to receive orders for the immediate destruction of Earth. Instead, he found himself facing something he had never seen before: uncertainty in the eyes of the Empire's supreme leadership. "Admiral Corvin," came the voice of High Commander Vex, the Empire's supreme military authority, "we have reviewed your reports regarding the human species. The High Command requires clarification on several points before proceeding with conquest." Protocols. Admiral Corvin felt a chill run through his body. In the Empire's long history, the High Command had never requested clarification about a conquest. They had always simply ordered the immediate subjugation of any species that refused to surrender. "High Commander," Admiral Corvin replied carefully, "the humans represent a unique challenge. Their response to our standard protocols has been completely outside our experience. They appear to view our arrival as an opportunity rather than a threat." "Explain," High Commander Vex ordered, but his voice carried a note of concern that Admiral Corvin had never heard before. "The humans are treating our conquest attempt as a technical problem to be solved," Admiral Corvin continued. "They have reverse-engineered our technology, identified weaknesses in our tactics, and developed countermeasures for our weapons. More importantly, they seem to be enjoying the challenge." The communication was interrupted by an incoming transmission from Earth. Ambassador Reed appeared on the screen, looking as calm and professional as ever. But there was something different in his demeanor now, a confidence that hadn't been there during their earlier meetings. "Admiral Corvin," Reed said with a diplomatic smile, "I hope you don't mind the interruption, but we've had some developments down here that we thought you should know about. We've been in contact with some of your subject species." Admiral Corvin felt his blood turn cold. "That is impossible." All communications with Imperial subjects are monitored and controlled. Well, yes, your official communications are controlled, Reed agreed. But humans are pretty good at finding alternative communication methods. We've been talking to resistance groups on several of your conquered worlds. Fascinating conversations. Really. The screen split to show additional faces. Dr. Martinez appeared, flanked by two figures that Admiral Corvin recognized with horror. They were Zelani and Threnody representatives, species that had been conquered decades ago. Admiral, Dr. Martinez said, I'd like you to meet some new friends of ours. It turns out that your conquered species have been very interested in our approach to problem solving. They've been sharing some very useful information about Imperial military installations and administrative weaknesses. One of the alien figures spoke in accented but clear human language. Admiral Corvin, my name is Scholar Den of the Zelani Research Collective. We have been monitoring your communications with the humans, and we wish to inform you that 17 Imperial worlds have experienced significant unrest in the past 48 hours. The second figure stepped forward. Engineer Thex of the Threnody Republic, she said. Our technical analysis indicates that the human countermeasures for Imperial technology are effective across all known weapon systems. We have begun implementing similar defensive strategies on our worlds. Admiral Corvin's worst fears were being realized. The humans had not just refused to surrender, they had inspired the Empire's subjects to resist. The pattern of conquest that had worked for millennia was falling apart. High Commander Vex's voice cut through the transmission. Admiral, you will initiate planetary bombardment immediately. This threat must be eliminated before it spreads further. But Reed was already shaking his head. I'm afraid that's not really an option anymore, Commander. You see, we've had some conversations with your fleet personnel as well. Turns out that when you give people time to think about what they're doing, some of them start asking uncomfortable questions. The bridge doors of the Dominator opened, and Admiral Corvin turned to see his own security chief walking in with several junior officers. But instead of their usual confident bearing, they looked troubled and uncertain. Admiral, Security Chief Mock said quietly, we need to talk. The next few hours transformed everything. It emerged that the human broadcasts had not just reached the conquered species. They had also been received by the Empire's own forces. For the first time in their history, Imperial soldiers were questioning the morality of their actions. The humans had done something unprecedented in galactic politics. Instead of trying to match the Empire's military strength, they had attacked the Empire's underlying assumptions about conquest and control. They had introduced the radical idea that different species could work together as equals. Ambassador, Reed found himself addressing a gathering that would have been impossible just days earlier. The conference room of the Dominator now contained representatives from multiple species, including several high-ranking Imperial officers who had requested asylum with the human delegation. The Empire has lasted for thousands of years, Reed said to the mixed audience, because it was built on a simple principle, might makes right. But that principle only works as long as everyone accepts it. Once people start questioning whether conquest is really necessary, the whole system begins to fall apart. Dr. Kim was presenting her analysis of the Empire's social structure to a fascinated audience of former enemies. What we discovered is that the Empire isn't really held together by military force, she explained. It's held together by the belief that military force is inevitable. Once that belief is challenged, the Empire becomes just another political system that can be changed. The transformation was accelerating beyond anyone's expectations. Within hours of the human broadcasts, resistance movements had emerged on dozens of Imperial worlds. But these were not violent uprisings. They were organized political movements demanding representation in Imperial government. More significantly, Imperial military units were refusing orders to suppress the resistance movements. The Empire's own forces were beginning to see their subjects as fellow beings rather than conquered enemies. Admiral Corvin found himself in an impossible position. The High Command was demanding immediate action to crush the rebellion, but his own officers were questioning whether the rebellion needed to be crushed at all. The humans had introduced a virus of doubt that was spreading throughout the Imperial hierarchy. The final meeting took place not in an intimidating Imperial chamber, but in a neutral location, a space station that had been hastily constructed by combined human and alien engineering teams. The symbolism was intentional. This was not a conquest negotiation, it was the birth of something entirely new. Representatives from all the Empire species were present, including several high-ranking Imperial officials who had chosen to participate in the discussions rather than resist them. The mood was electric with possibility. "We're not here to destroy the Galactic Empire," Reed announced to the assembly. "We're here to transform it into something better. Something that serves all its member species rather than just the ruling class." The discussions that followed lasted for days. Species that had been enemies for centuries found themselves working together to design a new form of galactic government. The Empire's vast military machine was restructured into a defense force that protected all member worlds equally. Most importantly, the new Galactic Confederation was built on a principle that the old Empire had never considered: voluntary membership. Species could join or leave the Confederation as they chose. Government decisions were made by consensus, rather than force. Admiral Corvin, now calling himself simply Corvin, found himself serving as one of the Confederation's military advisors. His experience with Imperial tactics proved invaluable in designing defenses against external threats. The irony was not lost on him that he was now helping to protect the same species he had once conquered. The transformation was not without challenges. Some Imperial hardliners attempted to maintain control through force, leading to brief conflicts throughout the galaxy. But these resistance efforts collapsed quickly when they faced the combined forces of the Confederation. Led by human tactical innovations and alien technological capabilities, Dr. Martinez established the Galactic Research Collective, bringing together scientists from dozens of species to work on projects that benefited everyone. The collaborative approach led to technological breakthroughs that surpassed anything the Empire had achieved through conquest and coercion. Tom Williams founded the Confederation Defense Academy, where military officers from all member species learned new approaches to warfare based on cooperation rather than domination. The Academy's motto became a reflection of the new galactic philosophy: strength through unity, victory through understanding. The most remarkable change was in the Empire's former subjects. Species that had been broken by conquest began to rediscover their unique cultures and capabilities. The Zelani resumed their scientific research with renewed enthusiasm. The Corvani started creating art that celebrated freedom rather than lamenting oppression. The Threnody began developing technology for exploration rather than survival. Ambassador Reed, now serving as Earth's representative to the Galactic Confederation Council, often reflected on how quickly everything had changed. The species that had arrived to conquer Earth had instead been conquered by human ideas about cooperation and mutual respect. The final irony was that the new Confederation proved to be far more powerful than the old Empire had ever been. When external threats emerged from beyond the galaxy, the combined forces of dozens of willing allies proved more effective than any conquering army. The laughter that had greeted the Empire's initial threats had become the foundation of a new galactic civilization. Humans had taught the galaxy that some problems were best solved not with weapons, but with better ideas. And the galaxy was a much more interesting place because of it.